This is the Now I Know podcast, where we cover topics to support your well-being. Today's episode will be about the importance of introducing meditation to children. I'm pleased to introduce my guest, Natasha Bartlett, founder of Kalmer Kids. Welcome, Natasha.
Thank you.
How are you feeling? You've literally flown in from Barbados last night. How are you feeling today?
Excited. I was really excited actually on the flight because I know we've been speaking about this for a while. Well, a year now, actually.
Yeah.
So it's excited to finally be here.
Yeah, lovely. Thank you for being here. So to my audience, I always tell them how I met my guests because, people sort of, how do you meet your guests? And, how do you find them? So before I was launching my podcast, I thought it's all about well-being. Fern Cotton had the Happy Place Festival. I said, oh, what a great place to get inspiration of guests. And I was walking with my daughter down the festival and I saw a teepee and with some kids meditating with you. And I just said to my daughter, oh my God, I have to connect with Natasha. So obviously I found you through that festival. Yeah. And obviously we've been talking for months and diaries weren't, aligning. But now we're here. Yeah. So I'm really, really excited. So Natasha, please tell the audience a bit more about yourself. Who is Natasha?
So I'm Natasha. I started Kalmer Kids about 2 years now, and it's a meditation program to teach children and families. It's a 360 degree approach, teaching children and families emotional regulation through calming techniques and meditation skills. And it's something that I'm really, really kind of very passionate about because I've worked with children for over a decade as a teacher and as a tutor. And through that time period, I've always been more kind of passionate about the social and emotional side of children more than the academics. And I just noticed that lots of children were struggling with emotional regulation. And it's something that I found really hard to watch and to see and to try and support. And therefore I decided that I wanted to go into teaching children how to be able to regulate and feel and process their emotions in all of its entirety and kind of move through their emotions with more fluidity and more ease. Because I think as an adult, to see a child in pain or to see a child suffering is just the worst thing. And I think we so much kind of gravitate to immediately wanting to fix it instead of actually giving them the skills to be able to refer to themselves and be able to move through it.
Yeah, it's really nice so that you're witnessing it, but you're not just brushing it under the carpet. You're like, I need to do something about this. I need to give them tools. I think it's beautiful what you're doing. So we spoke, we had a Zoom call the other day, didn't we, about some of the things we want to talk about. And I really want to delve deeper into the problems with children and screens and the things you've noticed with the emotions from that angle.
Yes. So I've worked with children across the socioeconomic spectrum, and I think I very much saw it as a problem that was becoming bigger, and that's before even COVID. And children, I witnessed having problems with regulating their emotions. That could be as anger, especially young boys finding it really hard and it be able to kind of move through anger with kind of more kind of peace and, becoming often maybe quite violent or quite aggressive. And I think children struggling with sadness, loneliness, obviously the most painful, hearing children talking about wanting to not exist anymore, children struggling with connecting with other children. You see a lot of children having all these kind of friends, but they're actually over social media platforms, and then finding it sometimes maybe hard to actually pick up social cues. And there's a real kind of like landmine out there. And I think it's hard not to be able to refer back to your own past. And I think maybe we romanticize our past. That's also, something that could be. But, I don't remember ever at school really seeing other friends or children experiencing what I was seeing as a teacher. And I think what's even harder is then you're in a academic institution where, as a teacher and as a child, there's so much pressure on like academics and being able to, it's all about like a society of having to strive and having to achieve. And how are children meant to achieve when they're actually struggling with just like their own self-identity? And I think as a teacher, there's so much pressure on children having to, the kind of academics being pushed down their throats. And actually, you don't have as much time to just be able to like emotionally support children. And that's what you want. All we want is for children to be happy. And I think, again, looking back at our childhood, it was playing in nature. It was being bored. It was, having a stick and try and think of like 50 different games you can play with this stick. And on the other side of boredom lies creativity. And children don't have the time anymore to be bored. It's parents almost struggle as soon as a child's bored, or children don't know what to do with themselves because they're used to having screens, which is all about addiction. It's all, there's no delayed gratification. Everything is quick. Yeah. Even as like an adult, if you're not kind of like jumping up and down, exploding, you've lost the children's attention immediately because they're kind of so short-wired. And, you have children struggling with sleep because they're going to sleep having just had their screens and no melatonin's being released. And I think it's also, we have to identify, and I don't want to kind of condemn any parent because, we're living in a really, really fast-paced world that's far faster than when we were younger. Mm-hmm. And parents are stressed. Parents are tethered to their phones. Parents don't have the time to be able to unwind themselves. And I think it's just a hard time to be a child right now, and it's a hard time to be a parent.
Yeah. Do you know what? It's just reminding me of, as much as we talk about children being addicted to their devices, but the amount of adults there are as well. I remember doing the school run. I've got quite a lot of boundaries with my kids and their phones, and also for myself, because we need to role model, and we can talk about role modeling behaviour. Exactly. We have to role model putting the phones away ourselves, and the amount of parents I'll see even dropping their kids to school, but they're not even present. Just for that little few minutes, they are just on the phones. Not here to judge, but if we want our kids to stop something, we also need to role model that as well. So you've seen so much as a teacher from both sides of the spectrum, seeing this, but before that you went through your own challenges and struggles, which led you to meditation. Could you give us that little journey of what you went through?
Yes, so actually it happened simultaneously to me working in an inner city school, and I had a lot of stress on me, personal as well as professionally. And I wasn't coping. But I guess it's quite hard to realise how much you're not coping until you pull back the lens of perspective and look back at, kind of like be able to put the dots together. So I was going through a time that I wasn't happy and I wasn't looking after myself, as we all do. We're kind of running a million different miles per hour, being pulled in all different directions. And I think the first thing that usually we let slip is our own, kind of self-preservation. And I was in a lot of pain, and I kept going to see the doctor, and it took them a long time to diagnose. And I was 28 at this time, diagnosed that I had cancer, and it was a cancer that's usually 65 plus. So, it took them a long time to be able to distinguish what it was. And during that process of trying to work out what it was, I was in a lot of physical pain, which then comes out and transpires and manifests as emotional pain. And when I finally was diagnosed, I'd been to a few silent meditation retreats before, and I literally immediately called, because I was doing meditation at the time, but not as kind of frequently. So I called the meditation retreat and said, I've just been diagnosed with cancer. Please, can I go to the next retreat? And there was one in 2 days' time. Uh-huh. So I immediately went, and I sat there for, over a week in silence, meditating with a bunch of strangers. You're not allowed to talk to anyone. And, at times I thought I was absolutely crackers to be doing that. However, the time that was most like tumultuous and most adverse time probably of my life, at the end of that retreat, at the end of sitting there, all day just kind of meditating, and having to kind of sit there with all of these kind of barrage of horrible thoughts and feelings and different memories. By the end of it, I felt so peaceful, happy, joy, exactly how you wouldn't expect to feel with a bunch of strangers in silence, when you just had this news. And it was actually at the end of that meditation retreat that I thought to myself, feeling so much glee, just if only I'd been taught these skills as a child or when I was younger, would my inner landscape not have been so different, and thus my outer landscape? You know, if I knew that I could have had self-referral skills to go inside, and actually that inside you have an inner voice, and inside you have your own guidance, and inside that's when you can find your most peace, because so much of our lifestyle is now kind of pushed towards going out externally, you know, looking for happiness outside, looking for activities, looking for people, and actually they're not always there. Even the people you love most aren't always going to be there, because they also might be going through their own troubles. And just to know that actually inside there is that peace and that stillness, and that is where that joy is, would everything not just been so different?
Absolutely.
And that's when I just thought I'd just love to teach children these skills, because they're so easy to be able to just calm yourself down when you're going through a huge heightened emotion, and to be able to find that skill to be able to level yourself out and actually trust the process, trust that, you know, everything passes, and you won't feel it with that amount of intensity, and that once it calms down, you can have your own, you know, you can think more clearly again, and you can find that inner wisdom of what to do next.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, I know. It's funny actually, even talking about it, because you can't help also looking at your own childhood and thinking to yourself, if only in those moments had I been able to sit there in calm and know that everything would be fine. Because we can sit there and close our eyes and even think about things that happened to us when we were younger, and it's still there. You still feel it so strongly. And it's because, I'm going to go off piste here a little bit, but I think we're very much from a generation of numbing. And it's whatever you do, it's don't feel your feelings. It's uncomfortable and don't sit with it. So, you know, and I think as adults from that generation, we therefore, when we see our children in pain, we want to do anything to take that away. So it's, you know, it's kind of distract them. It's give them a dummy, give them their milk, give them a digital nanny, which then transpires when you're an adult into have another glass of wine, go to the gym, watch Netflix, you know, do anything, but actually sit there with that pain and with that uncomfortableness. And the problem is that then what happens is you suppress it, and that suppression just builds up, and at one point it's going to implode. And if we just, my belief anyway, is if we were just at a young age are taught to feel the feelings are there for feeling, and you feel the feeling, you go through it, and it's after that you then say to your child, what can you do to make yourself feel better? What can you do to calm yourself down? And maybe the emotion's still really strong and you've got to move it out, you've got to shake it, or maybe you're ready to do some breathing and to calm your nervous system, and you know, tell yourself gratitude, tell yourself what you have in life and how amazing your life actually is, or manifest how you want to feel, because we've got so much power than we give ourselves. And I just think we didn't have that as a child, and it's actually the biggest gift is to be able to look after yourself.
And I think that's the biggest gift you're doing now, is like spreading this knowledge and the skills that you're going to teach parents and children, because like we're going to talk about role modeling, but I think that's the thing as well, especially being a parent, like you say, you just want to protect your kids, but really what we need to do is, challenges are going to come, and how do we equip them to navigate it and acknowledge it? And so what I do with my kids is, like, I'll just be like, oh, I'm going to do a presentation at work, I'm so nervous, and then showing them that I also get nervous, and this is what I do, so they know my thing is breath work. My daughter, I've noticed, like, if I can get her out in nature, that's her thing. My son is breath work because he gets like anxiety and worries about things, and I think that's the thing, isn't it, is there's so many, you know, ways of meditating, and it's finding that thing that works for you. So what might work for me might not work for you, and for our kids it's so different, but showing them that this is the toolbox and this is how you use each tool, and then you find the one that works for you when it's appropriate. In terms of breath work, I know we've mentioned it, and on your Instagram page you've done some really nice it was like a snake breathing technique, and I showed it to my son, and it's so lovely, because you know, that as much as my kids see me doing breath work, it's probably not very relatable for them, especially because I've got a 16-year-old and a 10-year-old. So talk to me about like what you do with kids and breath work. How do you do it with them?
So I work with children 4+, and I've split it into kind of make it age appropriate. So from the 4 to 8-year-olds, It's so cute. It's making it, very kind of relatable. All lots of kind of movement, lots of shaking. The breathing, like you just brought up, the snake breath is, kind of animal related things that they would love. Talking, and I've got this kind of cuddly toy, which is a storm cloud, and the storm cloud, Mr. Stormy, represents the different feelings like anger and sadness and fear. Sorry, forget the third one. And just making it relatable to the children that, we all have stormies, and every storm does actually run out of rain. And that the whole point is that, every feeling is energy, and we don't want this energy to get trapped in our bodies. So what we do is we can kind of, either shake out the stormies, make this kind of this feeling release. And then what kind of meditation or breath work would you like to do? So, for instance, the snake breath is really sweet because I think it's all about, extending the exhale to the inhale. And what's sweet about the snake breath for children is you make it almost a bit of a competition who can do the longest hiss. And then what you're actually doing is tricking them into extending their exhale. And then when it gets to the older children, so 9 plus and more, and the 13 to 16, it's adding a little bit more about, being able to identify their feelings, because all feelings are manifestations in the body. So it's, especially young children, it's often a tummy ache, or maybe that they get with the anxiety, like your son, maybe it's that their chest becomes a little bit trapped. So first being able to identify actually where is it happening in the body, and then what can I now do about it to be able to release and move through it. And then with the older children, it's also talking a lot about maybe the neuroscience and actually understand what is scientifically happening, because children are so curious and they always want to know why. And a thing for the older ones especially is, it's so important, as you said, for adults to role model, but especially when you're a teenager, we're not cool anymore. It's do anything that, the adult in our lives say. So I think what I try to think is that, when I was younger, if the Spice Girls did anything, I would have done it. So bringing up the celebrities, the footballers that all use meditation to either increase their ability to create songs or to be a better footballer, because they can, really manifest where they're going to strike the football in the goal. So it's basically making meditation cool.
Yeah.
And bringing out their own superhero inside of them and making them basically, no one cares if you're good at meditation. No one cares how many thoughts are happening in you. But they do care of how kind you are, how much joy you bring, what you contribute to society, what kind of person you are. Yeah. And if you're able to regulate your emotions and have power over them and not allow situations to overtake you, and to know that we're always going to have feelings, and some feelings are going to be more tumultuous than others, but we know that actually they will always go, and we will always find that calm again. But if we use these techniques like breath work and like meditation, and I must say what you said is something that I so strongly believe in, is that it's a 360-degree approach, and we can't expect our children to meditate or to calm their emotions if we're not doing it. Our children look at us like gods. The adults in their lives, everything to them, and they learn to walk, they learn to talk through watching the main adults in our lives. So which you just said so beautifully, we have to talk about all the feelings we have, because we can't pretend that they don't exist. And stress is a factor that's going to happen in everyone's lives. And like you said, if you role model of mummy's now feeling upset, so mummy's now going to actually do a little breathing. And I think another thing that I wanted to say is that very often when people are actually using these strategies, they sometimes prefer to take themselves away from the children. But what happens then is that actually the child isn't seeing you doing it. So actually, if you say, I'm going to now do a bit of my breath work to calm myself down, because I know then I'll be able to feel calmer and I'll be able to give you more attention. And they start then equating, mummy's actually a lot calmer, a lot nicer, a lot more present when or after she's done her breath work. And, they watch you doing it. And the more they watch you, even if you don't think they're watching you, they're always watching you out the corner of their eye. More likely than not, next time they get upset, you might actually find them like sitting in a corner doing the breath work, copying you.
So true. And it reminded me before I went back to work after having my son, I wasn't in a great state mentally and physically. And I went to a personal trainer, a friend of mine, and she was one of my guests on the podcast, Palm. And she said the same thing to me. She said, we need to role model fitness as well. And she said, when you're doing it, do it in the garden, do it around them. Don't do it on the side. And I remember I introduced skipping just to get my fitness up, and I never told the kids, but then they'll go, oh, can we ever go? You know, because they would just, I wouldn't force it, because when you force it, they're just like, oh, for God's sake, here, mum, does mum go again?
Yes.
But you're so right, it's about what we do. And even when I do my yoga, before I'd be like, shut the door, now I have the door open, or I'll do it in the kitchen. And I think when you get better at meditation, you're actually able to block out a lot of the noise anyway that distracts you. But they're a bit more mindful, a bit older now, 10 and 16, so they're very aware that I'm doing it. And you know, if they walk past me in the room while I'm doing my yoga moves, you know, they just start creeping around, and I don't let it have a go at them. They just know. But you're right, it's they're seeing me do it, and they understand. Like, for example, I got an email once at work, and I was so annoyed, and I said to my daughter, "I've just got to go around the park for a walk, because then it will calm me down before I respond." You know, so when I came back, I was like, oh, "That's better," and I said to my daughter, after about an hour or so, that email isn't really going to bother me. But when you're emotional, you can't respond to text messages or emails. So you're right, role modelling. But in terms of how you mentioned, you really wish we knew all this when we were younger. And this is what this podcast is about. Like, now I know. Do you think schools are getting better at acknowledging like the feelings and introducing like mindfulness and meditation into that school age?
So I think especially after COVID, it's, you know, hugely on the map. You know, I think mental health has become a crisis. Now 1 in 6 children have got a mental health issue. And I think the only issue with schools is, and it's not all schools, but it's definitely state schools, but there is so much pressure on them. You've got one teacher with 30 children, possibly a TA, but there are so many children that are displaying all different types of mental health problems, but it very often comes as a behaviour problem. And I think we've got to separate the two. We've got to know when a behaviour is actually a reaction of an emotion that they're finding hard to that they're struggling with. And I think because there's so much pressure on teachers, it's kind of a slippery slope. I think schools are definitely introducing it, and they're trying. But I think what needs to happen is then they need to cultivate a time for it. I mean, my dream would be, which I would love, is that my dream school would be, you come into school, you have no idea, as soon as that child's walked in the room, you have no idea what that child's been through. They might have been stuck in traffic. They might have been shouted at by their parent. They might have had a child be mean to them. They might have had a sibling that's annoyed them. They might not have finished their homework the night before, and they might be feeling upset or anxious about it. They come now into class, and they might have a couple of minutes of reading, but it's very much that academic starts immediately. And how are we meant to get the best of our children when our children are already shot with adrenaline and cortisol, and they're in the wrong nervous system? If my dream school would be that they come in and there's 10 minutes of a meditation or a breath work, or, it might not be for everyone. Maybe there's some children that are feeling a little bit aggravated. Maybe they need to go for a little run, but that we're making a conscious effort to make sure that their nervous system is calm, and that they're in the parasympathetic nervous system, and that they're then ready and relaxed for the academia. And that then the same happens after lunch. Again, you no idea what's happened on that playground. Come in and first introduce the calming skills. And then another one is having a corner, and I think this is also so good for children to have in their rooms, is a calm corner, which they really direct children to use, and that they can then, after being taught how to use it, they can take themselves there, and that's where they can get nourishment, and that's where they can feel back to their strength again, and that they're then able to actually read their own nervous systems and know when it's best for them to come back into the academic sphere. Because everyone knows that when you're stressed, you're never going to get the best performance. And if they know that there's a space in the room, an adult in the room, and that they're being honoured to actually trust themselves, that's when we're going to get the most out of our children.
Wow, let's start that wave now. To the audience listening, share this with your schools, exactly what Natasha has said. Let's start this wave, let's connect Natasha. This is exactly what we need to start making a change and a difference. And I think some schools do it, because I do hear people do it, but it's still not enough.
I think this is the thing, it's just not enough. And I think what happens is schools are definitely introducing it, some schools more than others, but it then goes to the teacher. How much stress is being put on the teacher? How much time have they got to effectively put this in placement in the classroom? And I feel at the beginning of the year, beginning of every term, that should actually be the priority. It's get our children back into the correct nervous system, make sure that they're relaxed, make sure that they're, able to at least feel that they're comfortable. And the pet teacher's the same. And it's again, if we're asking for the parents to role model to the children, the teachers need to be able to role model it. And it means, again, the teachers shouldn't be stressed.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they're given the time to be able to also learn these practices. Yeah. And I think, it needs to be taught.
Yeah.
You can't, this is why lots of people say and give up on meditation. They're like, oh, I can't meditate. I've tried it on an app, can't do it. You don't learn to drive by just sitting in a car. You have to be taught the skills.
Absolutely.
And I think this is what happens. And don't get me wrong, I think meditation apps have been amazing for putting meditation, breath work into the stratosphere. However, in my eyes, I wouldn't go for an AA meeting in a bar. Why go to the belly of the beast? It's the source of the problems is the technology and the phone. We're used to looking at the apparatus and flicking and going from one app to the other and being distracted, and that's what they're actually made for. So I don't think it properly can teach you the skill. And I think another thing is with meditation, someone's gone out there and said the whole point of meditation is to completely eradicate your mind from any thoughts, and you can't tell your heart to stop beating, you can't tell your mind to stop thinking. So I think the wrong idea of meditation has been put out there. It's not to think. It's just to not engage always with your thoughts and to watch the thoughts.
And that's when people go, I can't do it. But, and you're right. They're just overthinking it. So, and it's really interesting you said that, because I said to my daughter, like, the school had really high standards for GCSEs and the things they were asking from the parents and the teachers. And I said to my daughter, I wonder if your teachers are all right, because this is a lot for the teachers as well. They're having extra classes, extra weekends. And I just went, I care about your well-being. I want you to have a break and go and walk in the forest and in the park. And she was like, oh, Mum, please don't go and approach my teachers. It's not cool for you to come in. But, I was actually worrying about the teachers. This is a lot for them as well.
There's a lot of pressure on teachers.
But I think this is why, what you're doing is amazing, because it is something that needs to be taught, and you should need to be present, and there's lots of things to do. And what you don't want is that you're promoting something and then people try it and go, it doesn't work. And then they just put it in the drawer and forget about it. So I think for you, this is really amazing time for you. And I know lots of other people are doing it, but why would someone connect with you, Kalmer Kids? Like, what can you offer them if they were like going to join your Instagram page, or if you had a workshop, or if you came into a school? What could you offer them?
For children, it's learning to be able to how to emotionally regulate, feel in the body where an emotion's present, and actually trust that these waves, they come and go, and not to be scared of their feelings, and to have these skills like breath work and meditation to be able to move through a feeling, and then by the end of it actually have the power to decide, how do I want my day to go? How do I want to feel? What would make me feel better? So kind of empowering them with these skills. And for parents, it's teaching them how to regulate their own emotions so that they can co-regulate their child to teach them self-regulation emotions, which again is the strongest. Emotional intelligence is the most important tool to be able to successfully navigate through stress and have a more successful and present life. And I think it's then teaching these skills that you can then bring home and, as a parent, feel more content and happy with yourself that you're actually guiding your child through skills which will be for life. They'll take these tools, and as an adult, it means that if they can now have a stressful situation and handle it when they become an adult, these problems are going to get bigger, and if they can handle them with more kind of ease, they're going to be more successful adults.
I said that to my kids because they do their breath work, and I said to them, I really wish I knew breathwork when I was younger. And I said, like, Dylan, you're 10 and you're doing breathwork. Imagine what amazing human being you're going to be when you're older, because things that I could never navigate, you'll be able to navigate through it, you know?
I think another one as well, that, we've got so many adults now that are going to all these well-being practices because of stress, because of the world we're living in now, as well as childhood traumas. And I think it's so much more easier to create resilient children than fix a broken adult.
Yes, love that. So true. One of my guests, Sook from Body Sync, actually mentioned that they were trying to create retreats for families, which is another thing as well. So you're all doing it together, and imagine communicating with like your dad that you've never really opened with. It would be such a therapeutic experience.
Yeah.
But Natasha, we have a closing question.
Okay.
There's so much more I want to cover, but one thing I do want to sort of ask you is, I'd like the audience to come away from the podcast and say, now I know about the importance of introducing meditation to children. What advice would you go back and give primary school Natasha?
That got me a bit emotional, actually. I would want to teach my younger self that emotions are like waves and they come and go, and everything will pass, and that some waves are small, some waves are tumultuous, but actually to go inside and to just know that everything will be okay. And when those really big emotions come, to just sit there, breathe through it, and be your own anchor. Know that actually you can be there for yourself, and that life is difficult, and actually knowing that life is difficult. And I think this is another thing with our generation. Everything is very kind of, with social media, everything seems to happen so quickly and so easily. And actually it means that we're not being given these tools of resilience. And actually, if life was easy, it wouldn't be as exciting. And, to know that those difficult times actually give us more heightened, incredible times and appreciation for happiness and gratitude, and that actually it's all part of the ride. And if we learn to ride those waves of emotions instead of, kind of resisting it, it will actually give us, deeper ability for feeling happiness and, a larger spectrum of emotions.
Yeah, that's lovely. Really lovely. And speaking of waves, I mentioned to you when we had our call that my kids notice that when I'm in the ocean, I'm the calmest they've ever. And my daughter said to me, I've never seen you so calm. And like you say, your kids are watching you.
Yeah.
And I didn't realise maybe how the opposite of calm I was back in the day. And you know how you say when you're in that challenging moment, you don't realise you're until you're out of it.
Yeah, completely.
And I always sort of sometimes apologise to my kids, say, look, I'm sorry when I was like this, but I wasn't in the right space, but I've grown, and just acknowledging it, how much we've also grown.
That's what I was going to say as well, that the fact that you can have those conversations with your children and that they can see the difference, but that you've worked on yourself by using all these tools, and that therefore they can look back one day and say, I saw mummy like this, and then I saw mummy grow and become this. That gives them the knowledge that they can do that themselves, and that you're not stuck as one person. We go through these different chapters, but we've got to introduce these tools in order to be able to make ourselves happy. And I think the big thing is putting on your own oxygen mask on first. If they see that you're looking after yourself first, making sure that your cup is full, that you can then be the best parent and be the most present and be the most happy with them right now.
But I think because you cover so many topics around wellbeing with children, I'd love to have you on again with you, like a part 2 later on.
No, I would as well. Even on the train here, I was like, I've got so much. I know that I'll be on the train back now. It's just that and that. Yeah, there's so much. Yeah, that it's just vast, isn't it? I think a good one as well is to have another podcast from the view of being a parent. Yeah, and how, yours, as in when I'm speaking to you, you're feeling as a parent, like, what can you do as a parent? Because I think my mum feels so guilty now that I'm doing all this work, because she looks back so much at how she brought me and my sister up. We had, as most, a very kind of at times difficult upbringing, and she can see the direct impact that's had on us and the guilt that she feels. But we're in a different world. There's more knowledge. There's more, these skills are now available, and I think it's a huge thing of knowing, like I was just saying about you saying with your daughter in the water, like, you actually wouldn't be a good parent if you were perfect the whole time. And the worst thing is when you have these parents, not the worst, but one of them is where you have these parents that suddenly get divorced, and the children are like, oh, but I never saw them argue. I thought they were happy the whole time, and it totally rocks their world, and they've actually never had the foundations that life is hard. Yeah. And if you don't know that there are huge ups and downs, you're actually not giving your children any kind of foundation, and the house will just fall apart. Yeah. And they need to see you struggle. They need to see you angry. They need to see you cross. They also need you at times to shout at them and then come back and apologize, because what if they go to work and then they one day get shouted at? And I think parenting is a total landmine And we need to know that it's like you're constantly evolving as a person and that your child is your biggest mirror.
Yeah.
And majority of the time there's something going on and you're like, I actually have to be like, is it me?
Yeah, yeah.
What have I done? How can I fix this?
And it's interesting you spoke about your mum because, you know, when you're going through this healing journey, there's things you start to forgive your parents for what you've been through. And my sister and I talk about this a lot because we talk about how, especially coming from an immigrant family, I said to her, God, our parents were in their 20s and they came to a country and like, imagine the trauma they felt leaving their country, leaving their family. How did they do it? Most of the 20-year-olds I know haven't got a job.
Yeah.
But, you know, then and then you look back and you put yourself in their shoes at that time and think like, actually, they did what they just thought they was right at the time and they were in survival mode.
Oh, totally,
you know?
Totally.
And I think that's what's great about healing is like you forgive everyone that you probably had any sort of negative emotion for and you just understand, you have empathy and the emotion intelligence behind it.
That's why it's so important that we come to forgiveness because there's no point blaming them.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You know, then you're just a victim and then that gives you no strength either. Yeah, I mean there's so much to talk about. There really is.
But Natasha, thank you so much today. We finally did it.
Yeah, thank you so much.
It's been so lovely.
Yeah, you've made me feel very calm because I definitely was nervous because I'm a bit sleep deprived. So thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I'm not surprised you suggested to do it because
thank you.
Naturally you're very, very easy to talk to.
Oh, and I love it. It's just like I feel like I've just met a friend for lunch, and it's just being recorded. But Natasha, thank you so much, and to my audience, thank you for listening.
Thank you.